Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. All things Middle-earth here with a video on the Dunlanding team. Now, there are only 3 of these guys in the game. I want to talk about why I think they're actually a pretty solid choice in the game. And maybe you're someone who's not chasing after the newest legendaries like Lord Elrond or whatever may come next, and you're just playing the game trying to figure out who you want to use. And I want to talk about how you can use this team and how you can actually fill them out with some Isengard team members who do synergize with them. And there's a good chance that down the road, this team or a partial bit of this team could be required for legendaries like Saruman or Theoden or anybody in that kind of general area in conflict with Rohirrim. So you could end up using him down the road, but let's go ahead and jump into the video. Okay, the first one is Arlington the Chieftain. Now, this, in terms of a not technically complete faction, is one of the only ones that actually has a lead in it, which is kind of cool. So if you do happen to want to just run a maybe like off meta or just random team, you could definitely run this because they do have all the pieces there. And like I said in the intro, there are some Isengard squad members who do synergize with this team, so you can fill out the whole squad. And I'll talk about that in a second. But starting out, the ability here, and the big thing that we're going to see with this team is the Blood Frenzy skill. Now, these characters, these Dunlanding characters, will get stacks of Blood Frenzy when they do certain things, which we'll cover. And when they get enough stacks, they not only get kind of juiced up, but they also have some powerful attacks they can unleash with that, which I think is very, very interesting. So the lead here is called Blood Bonds, and it says, whenever an enemy or shadow squad member dies, all Dunlanding squad members gain 1 stack of Blood Frenzy. And then the big thing here, we don't see on a lot of teams right now. I mean, there are teams that can heal over hits like Isengard, but Dunlanding squad members gain plus 20% life steal. So life steal, healing granted based on a percentage of the damage dealt. So every time they hit and do damage, they're going to steal some of that health or some of that damage out back to themselves, which is pretty cool because other groups like Isengard, you have to land Banes to heal under Ugluk's Sleep, for example. This is just going to have a life steal, and as you go through the levels, you're going to increase some stats based on how much Blood Frenzy you have. So for example, if you have 10 stacks of Blood Frenzy, you're going to have 10% extra life steal, 10% extra focus, and then you have an additional 10 and 10% life steal here. So your total life steal can be up to about 50% with a high enough stack of Blood Frenzy, which is kind of crazy. So the lead here is very unique and one that I definitely think we could see in the future of this game. And if we get more Dunlanding characters that make the team even better, it could even be a very, very meta team. But that's the lead for the Dunlanding team. Then we have a basic attack here, which is going to grant a stack of Blood Frenzy to all Dunlanding allies. So again, the big thing here is they do damage. They have some debuffs and Banes they put out, but the big thing is that they're trying to get these Blood Frenzy stacks going. So his basic here is going to give that Blood Frenzy to everyone in the squad. Next, we have an attack the enemy target and inflict expose. The expose duration can be up to 2 turns, so reducing armor, kind of setting up enemies for big hits. In this one here, this is an AoE ability called Call the Crabine. It says inflict blind for 1 turn on the target enemy and reduce their turn meter by 1% per stack of Blood Frenzy on self. So if you have 10 stacks of Blood Frenzy, you're going to reduce whoever you're attacking's turn meter by 10%. If this character has 10 stacks of Blood Frenzy, inflict blind for 1 turn onto additional random enemies, lose all stacks of Blood Frenzy. That's just the base level. So as you go here, we're going to reduce the target's turn meter by 10% more, an additional percent of turn meter reduction per stack of Blood Frenzy right here, more turn meter removal, and then more turn meter per Blood Frenzy. So with 10 stacks of Blood Frenzy, this could add up to a pretty significant amount of turn meter you're reducing from the enemy. And it's not a complete AoE blind because it does hit the target plus 2 more, so up to 3, but still putting blind out on a lot of enemies is a very, very good ability. And then lastly, the unique ability here is when attacking an enemy with a Bane, gain 1 stack of Blood Frenzy. He also gets armor. When a Dunlanding ally attacks an enemy with a Bane, gain 1 stack of Blood Frenzy. And at the very, very end here, it says, when an Isengard ally attacks an enemy with a Bane, gain 1 stack of Blood Frenzy. So if anybody in the squad that's Isengard or Dunlanding, again at the max level, anybody who's Dunland or Isengard attacks, you're going to be getting stacks of Blood Frenzy over to your lead here, which means he can just, continue using, obviously there's a cooldown here, but the continued use of his Call the Crabine, which is going to put out a pretty mass blind on the entire enemy team, is a pretty significant thing. So definitely a very interesting lead kit here for the Dunlanding team. Next up, we have Edrick. Edrick is the tank in this squad. His basic ability is Wild Charge, which is just damage that increases with each level. His next one is going to give him a stack of Provoke, and he's going to get stacks of regeneration. So he's going to, just as this levels up, get more regeneration and more stacks of Provoke. Then he's going to have a bigger attack as well. All these Dunlings are going to have an attack that triggers a better effect when they have more stacks or up to 10 stacks of Blood Frenzy. So this one says grant might for 1 turn to self and 2 random allies. Gain 1% turn meter per stack of Blood Frenzy on self. If this character has 10 stacks of Blood Frenzy, also grant turn meter to all allies. Lose all stacks of Blood Frenzy. So this is going to increase here 1, 2, 3 plus the additional one here. 4% turn meter per stack of Blood Frenzy, which is going to be 40%. So when he has 10 stacks and you use this, you're going to get 40% turn meter to every single person in the squad. So if you pair that with the fact that your leader has an ability that is going to reduce turn meter, these guys going back to back could be a huge switch where, you know, you're in a really rough spot. You pull their turn meter back with this ability here. And then with Edrick, you use him and you give yourselves a bunch of turn meter to get additional turns. That could be a huge swing here if you get your Blood Frenzy stacks built up enough. So I really like the whole Blood Frenzy mechanic here. It's very, very interesting. Lastly, his passive is going to be when an ally is attacked, 25% chance to gain 1 stack of Blood Frenzy. If that ally is Eisenguard or Dunland, chance is doubled. He also gets increased block chance. He gains increased block chance per stack of Blood Frenzy. And when a Dunlanding or Isengard ally is attacked, gain 5% turn meter. So again, lots of synergy between the Dunlandings and the Isenguards here. Increased turn meter. So it's a kind of a, you know, a quicker turn meter team, which we talked about in our last video with the Haradrim, which I'll link up in the top right. They had a lot of turn meter manipulation, and someone actually commented that that could potentially be very, very good for raids. So I'm starting to think through maybe this turn meter reduction could be great because you're giving it to yourself and you're taking it away from the enemy. This could be great on a Balrog or a Cave Troll in our Mines of Moria raid because it's just one enemy and all you got to do is keep taking their turn meter down so you can keep moving. But again, we have the, you know, the stacks of Blood Frenzy going out every time that an ally is attacked, at least 25% chance, which again is going to add up over time. Now, lastly, in this squad is Wex. Wex is going to be the attacker for the Dunlands. He has Raging Blood, which is going to be an attack, and he's going to gain a stack of Blood Frenzy. Big shock there. If the target has Bleed, gain 1 additional stack of Blood Frenzy, and then more damage, and then on crit, I'll gain an additional stack of Blood Frenzy. So again, just damage, Blood Frenzy, all that kind of stuff. We're kind of used to it now. The next one is attack the target 2 times for 70% damage per hit and inflict 1 stack of bleed for 1 turn. And he gains a stack of counterattack. And then as you go up, the damage per hit increases. He gets more bleed durations, more bleed stacks, and more counterattack stacks. So a pretty good ability with the Bloody Cleave there. And then his big ability here, Pillage, it says attack the target 2 times for 90% damage per hit and an additional 5% damage per stack of Blood Frenzy on self. So up to 50% extra damage per hit on this one here, which is going to be a pretty big hit. Again, he's an attacker, so he'll be doing more damage. If this character has 10 stacks of Blood Frenzy, ignore 70% of the target's armor. So not only with 10 stacks of Blood Frenzy do you do 50% damage per stat, or 50% damage per hit, but you're also going to ignore 70% of the target's armor, which is kind of crazy. Then as you level this up, you get just increased damage per hit, and 5% damage per stack of Blood Frenzy. So this 5% goes to 10%. So if you have 10 stacks of Blood Frenzy, you're going to do 100% extra damage per hit and ignore 70% of the armor. I think this thing's going to be wiping people out pretty majorly. So I think he could be crazy. I'm going to actually pull up the Lotr.gg stats really quickly because I believe he had a pretty high attack stat in the game, but I don't want to misquote that. Yeah, so if you look at Lotr.gg, I'll put it on the screen really quick here. I have sorted here by damage, and you can see if we go down, we have Gore the Brute at number 1. Number 2 is a tie for these 4, Bolg, Aylmer, Keeley, and Mauer, who have the 2nd highest damage in the game. And then Wex is sitting right below that at the 3rd highest damage in the game. So you have a very high damage character in the game who is ramping up his hits very, very largely with this Pillage ability. I think this could be something that definitely has potential to one-shot characters if they're not, I don't know, if you're reducing all their armor, huge hit. This could be crazy. So I'm excited to see how much damage this thing actually gets out, but that is a very, very good ability. And lastly, on Wex here, his passive is called Wild Bloodlust. He's going to gain crit chance, crit damage, and gain additional crit chance per stack of Blood Frenzy, additional crit damage per stack of Blood Frenzy. So the more stacks of Blood Frenzy you have going out these guys, the absolute better. It's just going to be a game changer. Every single one of them has an ability that they do more damage or they have more crit chance or whatever it is when they have more stacks of Blood Frenzy. So you want these guys getting as many stacks of Blood Frenzy as possible. Now I want to talk about some Isengard members that I think can be a part of this team. Now I think you could go with anyone, but I think there are probably some best case here. There were some references to bleed and different effects happening with bleed. So Isengard allies that add bleed would definitely complement even more. So someone like Azhak would be a great one. Now, Azhak is one of the higher damage characters in the game as well, with some really, really big hits. His middle ability here, Bleed Dry, does have a bleed on it. He also has an Ignore Taunt. He's a pretty big hitter. He does have some synergy with Mauer, specifically, who is also, as you saw, tied for second highest damage in the game. So potentially you could put someone like Mauer and Azhack in, who are going to synergize, and you have Azhack getting Mauer Might. They do really big hits. You got bleeds going out here, that queen option. You could also look at someone like Dunnar, who is going to do bleeds as well. His basic on the bloodletting puts out bleed. He has the heal, obviously, so that's not a bad thing at all. And overall, a heal might not be a bad thing in this team because they don't have that. So the heal could be beneficial. And then lastly, Ugluk. Again, there's a lot of good members of the Isengard team, so I'm kind of suggesting a lot of them. But Ugluk, obviously, he's very, very good. He has the blind. He has the team up attack with Mauer that does the disable. So you could definitely do those guys. Maybe if you're just starting out or you haven't farmed Azhack yet, you could run Mauer and Ugluk. They would be great together. But Azhack does have some synergy with Mauer, and then obviously the heal on Dunnar is great. But all that to say, you could probably pick two of the... I probably wouldn't go with Morza in this squad. I think he works great in the Isengard squad. I don't think he'd add as much to the Dunland squad, but out of the other four, you could probably pick any of those to put in with the Dunland squad, and I think it would work pretty well, actually. So let me know down below what you guys think of this Dunland team. I think it's one of those that I probably won't get around to farming it until it's required for a team, just because the game's going to keep me busy farming whatever teams are required for the next legendary event. But if there were not a legendary coming out, it'd be one to be closer to the top of my list to farm. Again, anybody with turn meter, removal, or manipulation of any kind is going to be very, very good, especially potentially against the raids, where you have one enemy you're fighting who has a lot of health, and you're just slowly trying to remove their turn meter so you can keep hitting over and over and over again. And for a team that kind of wants to buy time to get their stacks of Blood Frenzy up, so they're just hitting as hard as possible and applying the most debuffs or whatever it is, I think there's a pretty good potential that this team could be one of those that just surprises us and is very, very good against the new raid we should be getting, hopefully, in the near future. But anyway, I want to talk about the Dunland squad because I think they're kind of a sleeper that I don't see anybody using, but obviously they're not one that the game starts you with, so you'd have to go out of your way to farm them. But maybe if you're not chasing the elves and you've been playing, you got your Rohan team, you got Isengard, whoever, if you already have an Isengard built, you could look to add these guys in to have, some different options for an offensive squad. So let me know what you guys think down below. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.